All right, good. Good.
I'm sorry about the confusion, but there were a lot of Petr Smejkal.
Yes,
I didn't know.
it's a common name. Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. You know, I asked because I do this series only with personal contact, and I asked my singing teacher, who's Czech, if she knows somebody nice, that is very important for me, and then interesting. And she gave
Okay.
me your number, you know, and
All
I
right.
didn't know that you're such important epidemical expert in your country. So I'm very happy that you accept the interview.
Thank you. We are a small country, as you know, so there is not many experts.
I don't think
Condensed
so.
and so
Yeah,
limited,
thank you
limited,
very much.
limited expert.
My first question is because I was very happy that she gave me your contact because I think Czech was one of the countries that reacted really quickly and very good. So because I was seeing, wait a minute, you know it better, but the first cases was on 1 March, 1st of
Mhm.
March, and then on 12th of March, the government declared the state of emergency. And then in 16th of March they closed all the borders and they did the curfew. So I asked myself, why Czech and not Germany or Spain or the other countries?
I think, yes, thank you for mentioning it. I think we really managed very quickly to slow down the epidemiological curve, which I know everybody probably knows, what it means. If you have a rapid increase of cases,
Yeah.
as it happened in Italy, you can overwhelm your healthcare system to the point when you cannot take care of the sick people, and you also cannot take care of people who have other diseases besides COVID. So I think also because of the already some experience that or information they had from Italy, which was very scary, and the limited information we have from China, the government learned that you should really act very quickly, which was good. Yes, we slowed down the epidemiological curve to the point when, and I always stress the point that the government does it with regards to the quality of the healthcare system. You mentioned Germany. I don't think Germany is a case of a bad bad management of this epidemic. I think the Germans did actually quite well. I think Italy is certainly or what happened in Lombardy, especially, is a scary scenario. On the other hand, they were the first. They had very limited information. We all know that China doesn't provide all the information that is needed, or provides information that is a misinformation and other information. So I think the bad thing of what happened in Italy is that they were the first, and of course, with regards to the Italian healthcare system, they were overwhelmed, and also a lot of the people in Lombardy apparently are elderly people, and there are other reasons, for the failure.
The Spanish health system is not so bad. It's a very good one. The thing is, maybe with the crisis, they did like some reductions. But I'm German, but also Spanish, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
Spain, so I see that both countries, and I saw that I'm not sure they didn't take it very seriously in the beginning, and suddenly it exploded and exploded a little bit less in Germany than in Spain, you know. But
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
this might,
I think in my view, I have experience from the United States, and I have experience with the French healthcare system and Czech healthcare. I don't know the German one, but we have people from Germany, we have professors from Germany. So it seems that it's a pretty functional healthcare system. But of course, it's just one. There's a lot of numbers and a lot of things to look at as far as the epidemic. One of them, of course, is the quality of healthcare system in regards to the number of ventilators, in regards to the number of healthcare personnel who can manage the ventilators, which is actually quite a problem in the Czech Republic chronically, that we have shortage of nurses who leave the Czech Republic and go to Germany to work. and the quality of the hospitals, the architectonical quality of the hospitals with regard to infection control, meaning how far the beds are from one another, if you have spaces, if you have isolation rooms. There is so many variables in this epidemic that you have to look at, and how you judge a healthcare system. That in some ways the Czech healthcare system is good, in some it isn't. But overall, despite being the best Eastern European healthcare system, I think it's generally, in many aspects, worse than the German ones. So
Spanish one, what happened?
I don't know the Spanish, but I've heard it's a very good healthcare system.
Yeah.
As much as well as the Italian Lombardy healthcare system, because it's the richest part of Italy, right? So I think the major point in Spain and Italy was underestimation of how quickly the disease spread and how contagious it is. And maybe even in Italy, sort of overrating the quality of the healthcare system, thinking we can manage, we can let things go, and we can manage. The NHS in Britain, which I have some information from, had the same problem. They really were letting people get together, and were underestimating masking even in the hospitals for too long. And then when you miss that point, when the exponential curve rises, then it's too late. Then no matter how good healthcare system you have, you're running in big difficulties.
So because
with that, I give the Czech government big credit, but also it reacted based on information from other countries. Austria, as a very close country to us, is in a similar situation, although had more cases. But of course, also the number of, we had big problems with testing, for example. You also have to test quickly. If you look at the Asian countries like Taiwan, Singapore, their success was that they quickly tested everybody and they quickly isolated the positive cases. So they prevented the spread of the disease. We didn't achieve that. Up until now, we still lack in testing. I mean, we're doing better and better in testing the population. I think with that, the Germans are doing pretty good, that they're testing, that the availability of tests is so that's another variable, with the epidemic. So there's a lot of things, but yes, the timing is the most important, and the timing when to step to the curve and when to slow down the epidemics, when to tell people you should stay home, you should mask, you should keep distancing, social distancing, was done in time in the Czech Republic. That's for sure.
My question is, you were all your life preparing for such cases, but normally the people, they didn't take it seriously. Did you, when you saw China, did you say, oh, this is coming, or were you calm and said, okay, no, it's not such a deal?
Yeah, I didn't expect this drama that came. I totally expected that something is coming, because if you take every big epidemic, always comes from Asia. It doesn't have to be China, but the contact between the animals, the vectors, and the reservoirs of these viruses. So the potency to mutate and transfer the virus from the animals on the markets or even in the society, the closeness of people to the animals is the biggest on this planet in Asia. Absolutely. All the big, the swine flu, the bird flus, all these big epidemics in the world, even SARS in 2002, they all came from China. They all came from Asia. I don't want to blame China for it, but it's the fact that in China, the people are very close to their domestic animals and they're very close to the poultry. So the mixing of the viruses is the cause. I'm not the one that believes in those conspiration theories that it's it was a biological, but it's a basic fact. If you look at all the epidemics in the past 20 years, the majority of them started in China. I mean, regardless of, let's say, Ebola is from Africa and all those contact, but this respiratory viruses, it's usually Asia, and China is the biggest country in Asia. So when this happened in Asia, with the fact how quickly diseases transfer these days, with the flying, with the fact that there is 20 times, I saw some studies showing that there's 20 times more flights from China than 10 years ago. I mean, the connection of China with the world these days is so big that it couldn't just stay there. Number one. Number two, I think they totally, because they were the very first country. I think they totally underestimated it. That's known, and I think they also hit a lot of information and hit the fact that that the virus was there. I tell you an interesting thing for which I have no proof, but there's people in this country coming to me telling me, because we had a lot of Chinese tourists already at the end of the last year, and they were telling me, I had these strange symptoms. I had fever. I lost my sense of smell. I had a strange, respiratory disease that didn't go away after a week. And they live in touristic places where there were groups from Wuhan, China, traveling at the end of last year. So it probably was, something was around earlier than the Chinese authorities actually, said that there was.
And do you think,
but we have no proofs. We can now test the people with antibody tests and says, you have an antibody positive test, so you've been through coronavirus. And if you remember that the only strange fever and respiratory infection you had was November, December last year, maybe it was a coronavirus. But of course, the antibody response to the virus is very variable. We have people who probably had coronavirus and don't have any antibodies because the disease was mild. So as far as the antibody response and measuring, who went through the disease and who did not, there's a lot of questions still.
But you expected something to come, but not such a such a big thing in the end.
No. I think it was overwhelming. It's still, of course.
Yeah.
I think it surprised everybody. I don't know any expert, anybody who would say I expected such a big deal.
I didn't expect it either. No.
Right.
I think I wanted to ask you the question afterwards, but I will ask you now, because you said it's a thing of timing. So now we are all in this mess, and we're all a third of the planet is in quarantine. So now we have to, we are slowing down the deaths and so on. So we want to go out of this quarantine, and this it's most stressful for me thinking about what happens afterwards, because now it's safe, and I think
I understand, Katja. I think the problem is we have to find a way to go through. The way to go through is on the one hand, make sure the healthcare system can cure all the sick people and can take care of them, even the old and sickest one. So we don't run into Italian scenarios when doctors had to let some people die because they have lack of resources. On the other hand, which we see here, unfortunately, maybe we are living in one extreme. We have to let the society live. We cannot let. For me, as a doctor, we also have problems that a lot of patients has had their operations postponed, and because the whole healthcare system is focused on coronavirus. So there's a lot of people who are dying, which we cannot measure because their care was put off, up until some time after coronavirus. And in the meantime, they died, or their cancer metastasized, or they became, and that's number one. Number two, the psychological impact on people who had to live in quarantine, who lost their jobs, who totally, who were building businesses that went bankrupt. That's also something that, doctors especially forgot to take into account because we focus on the health. But as citizens, we have to make sure, these things also have to be taken in. So in my view, we have to let really, probably because it's so contagious, let the virus go under control. We have to control the epidemiological curve, spread it in time. And it seems very likely that the virus will be around in a year or two, and maybe will come back in some ways because the antibody response is not so good. We just have to have it controlled. We have to make sure that we can take care of all the people who get it, and they'll get the best treatment. I don't think at this point we can completely say we're going to eradicate the virus. I think that's, in my view, a very naive perspective. So. And we have to let the society. We have to let some businesses go. We have to let the people at least enjoy themselves a little bit. You know what I mean? And that's a very difficult way. But bearing in mind all the aspects, that's how we have to manage. Also, Eastern Europe has a very bad experience, and probably Spain too. And as far as I know history, with totalitarian systems. And we have a lot of people who are really ready to abuse the epidemic for their own sake, for their own power, to tell the people there is a new enemy we have to fight, and for the sake of the fighting the enemy, we have to constrict our liberties and personal freedoms. That is also a big danger. So all these things, the political, the sociological, the economical aspect, the healthcare, which should be first. I'm sorry, but because I'm a doctor, I obviously think about it. But I also have to see other things. And I think and plus we need to be united to fight it. I don't like, as a European, I'm very sad about seeing that there is no common European approach, that we should help each other way more than wait for some Chinese plane to bring us respirators, as it happened in the Czech Republic when every European country closes its border, and then some politicians are saying, oh great, we have an airplane from China that saved us from this, when we all know that it was actually the Chinese government who hid a lot of information at the beginning. So cooperation in Europe.
More cooperation, but if maybe, for example, what I was thinking, if you are a politician and say, okay, you're not the doctor now, you're a politician, don't think about economics, how would you do this? Would you say, okay, because
I would say, I would tell the people, look, if you think that the virus will go away, if you think we're going to tell everybody to stay home and mask themselves and stop the economy, yes, we can stop the virus, but we can also stop life. So if somebody is telling you that this is the way to go, don't listen to it. We have to find some compromise. So we have to get the virus under control, which we achieved in the Czech Republic, which some countries did not achieve, and that let and lose some of these restrictions we applied at the very beginning. We had to let some schools go. And the most important is still the social distancing, the masking, and the hand washing. It's a basic concept that people always forget about it, because that's the way of transmission. So if you let some business open when people are sitting 3 meters apart, are washing hands, are masking, the masking is very important. In Czech Republic, it's mandatory. I actually quite agree with that. The masking is very important, and scientifically show that it slows the spreading of the virus. If you these 3 things, if you apply and if you enforce them, if you really make sure that they're happening, because people sometimes don't behave the way you would like them to, then you're doing fine, and then you can let some things go. High schools, maybe universities, maybe some businesses to go. And thus you prevent the huge psychological and the economical impact, which also impacts the health of the society. So compromising and taking all these things together would be a smart politician's way to tell the people this is how we're going to get through.
The problem is, for example, if there are not any enough masks,
Yes. Well,
it's better people go out or not. This is the problem.
Is it still a problem in Spain that you have shortages?
Yeah, it's shortage. It's getting better now, but it was a big time that I didn't get the mask, and there were a lot of people, like medical people, that would get infected because they didn't have the accurate masks and gloves and so on. I think they're trying to solve it, but the problem is, I'm not sure if they didn't tell everybody to wear mask or wear whatever, cough, whatever, but
whatever, exactly. Whatever is better than nothing.
Yeah.
We had the first 2 weeks were critical, and then also the Czech society, interestingly, is very good in this crisis situation. People starting to help each other. It was fantastic. Not only on a personal level, but we have problems with testing at our hospital. Suddenly we found that there is an academical institution, Institute of Molecular Biology, that's doing research that said, oh, we can revert the research into making tests for you. We can work like a lab temporarily for you. So they provided tasking for us. We had women nurses who asked the women, some women who can sew, so they were sewing the masks. We had a guy, brilliant people who 3G printers. He was printing shields, for healthcare providers. So suddenly a lot of companies reverted their production into making protective equipment.
As well, but it was so, it's such a big infection and death and so on, that it was not possible to cope with it. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
It's
Uh-huh.
done well, you know.
Yes. Well, you have to. That's why the important for the government is to apply the measures very early, because what happens, it buys you the time. That's the most important thing. You step on the curve, you put the restrictions, and then it buys you 3 weeks, and in the 3 weeks you can start making masks. You make sure people are equipped. You make sure they know what's going on. They can adapt the business and all this, but you cannot do it while the disease is spreading, because then you're losing. You have to first and in good time step in the curve. I call it. You slow down the curve, meaning apply the measures, tell quarantine people stay home. Stop a lot of things, social distancing, close restaurants, close school. You have to do this very quickly, so that you have time to do the other things. Start producing equipment, explaining people what's going on, reverting the hospital ways of taking care of people into some kind of a warlike scenario where you know how to deal with COVID patients.
My
It's all
question,
about.
yeah. Continue. Sorry.
No. It's really it for us. It was very good that we had time to
Yeah,
prepare for these things,
sure.
which did not happen in Italy and probably did not happen in Spain.
Sure. My question is, you're studying virus all your life, and suddenly is there something you are you find it strange in this virus, or are there a lot of, we know some things about it, but what don't we know?
I think we knew SARS in 2002. We knew the MERS epidemic. They were more deadly actually, but the viruses that are more deadly, they're also stopped more quickly, because they kill more people. So a smart virus is not the virus that kills. It makes people sick and makes himself spread, which is this virus. So of course, we knew coronaviruses happen every winter season. It's 1/3 of respiratory infections are due to very harmless coronaviruses that go away. This one is different. Yes, this one is certainly, but it happens. Viruses mutate. It happened in the past. I don't think it's something that the mankind will not survive. I think it just caught us unprepared. And make us and caught us with this world that's interconnected. Of course, a lot of these epidemics before didn't spread that quickly, because you couldn't get from one part of the globe to the other one in a couple of hours. So it's not that the virus is so much different. We are different, and we stop. We're using cell phones. We touch cell phones. We stopped thinking about hygiene. Basically, we just stopped thinking about a lot of things that that are still here. I mean, it's not that new. If you look in the past, these things happened, and I'm quite optimistic, I think. But I'm sure the virus will be around. There might be some comebacks in the winter times, in areas that were not immune. The only positive things about societies like Italy and Spain, that there's a lot of virus. I think that a lot of people will become immune to it.
So what was the big question now is, if you haven't had it, do you get immune or not? Because there are people that were tested negative and positive. So
Yes. It's probably you have to be, if you have a big disease, if you have a strong viral load infection, you probably create a lot of antibodies and you're immune for a longer time. If you just have a mild course, if you have a little fever and maybe a little running nose, your antibody response is not enough to prevent you till the end of the year, and you may get reinfected. That happened too in the past. However, you already have some protection. You still will have some little antibodies to protect you. So the second wave and the third waves are not going to be that bad as the first one, unless it hits a totally unimmune societies, which I'm sure is still are on the earth. And you can also see how it's also, every coronavirus, although we doubt it, many scientists doubt it, it's still the factor of warm and dryness. So with spring and summer, I think it will see a slowdown. And countries that will, in this part of the year will get into the colder climate, like South America, I think they'll get more cases. And
Do you think that we have to stay with a mask and with a 2 meters distance, 2 years, 1 year, 2 years?
You know what? I think there's some things which we totally forgot doing. Think that the Asian people are always wearing masks. It's because of the pollution, but it's also because of infections. So I think masking and washing hands and keeping distance for other people is something we'll have to do forever. And there's no, it shouldn't be that, or at least keep thinking about it. And it's okay. It's much better to keep doing these three things and not have businesses closed and restaurant closed. It's to live with the virus.
Yeah, we're in Spain, there are tapas.
I know there are countries where people are more intimate. Italy, I'm sure it plays a role. I mean, there are big culture differences, and this certainly plays a role. People get together more. If you look at Scandinavian countries, even Sweden could let even the restaurants open because people live alone in their houses because of the density of population is very low. And also in Spain, I'm sure it's way worse in cities, right? In Madrid is probably the worst scenario. In
Yeah.
New York, if you look at New York, where people say, why New York? Because there's high-rise buildings, because there's a lot of people who are overweight. There's also, imagine that the virus attacks this sedentary lifestyle people. It's the obesity, hypertension, and diabetes are three risk factors for this virus. I mean, look how many people are obese, hypertensive, and diabetic these days. Because we stop walking, we just, we call it civilization disease. And it's interesting that the virus targets especially these groups of people. So
Yeah. Are you afraid because you're over there, I suppose, confronted with are you confronted with sick people?
yeah.
Are you afraid? Are you afraid?
Am I afraid? No. When I wear it's better to know, that somebody is sick, because you wear the protective equipment. You always dress, and it's very important for a healthcare worker to manage the protective equipment. To dress it, and the donning and doffing, it's called. When you're taking it off, you should not get infected, right? There's a lot of healthcare workers that work with the sick people, and then they undress, and then they go eat. They eat together. They touch. You have to really, make sure you know what you're doing. But it's better that that you're dealing with coronavirus. It's better than going to a party when you don't know who's infected and who is not. In
My
my view.
my question is, you are as a professional. If you go out or you're speaking with a family and he touches the mobile phone and then goes there, do you see a virus everywhere, or is it
No,
ancient?
no. And I live in a country where the prevalence is pretty low. Maybe I would think differently if I was in Great Britain or Spain. We really have a very low penetration of the virus to the society.
Yeah.
But we also have no life, the last month, and I'm sure when they're gonna loosen the restrictions, when they let people work and let go to restaurants, it'll climb a little bit. The point is to have it under control, to make sure it's not climbing this way, to make sure it's maybe a slow increase. Because, like I said, I don't believe in eradication of the virus.
My last question is the positive things. Do you see some positive coming out of this?
Sure, I see people can reflect on their lives and realize that a lot of things are unnecessary, right? That maybe if they cannot go to the gym, maybe they can run in the park. Maybe they can think of other things than just making more money and focus on growth of the economy. Maybe it's a time of self-reflection. Maybe we can realize that helping each other is better than individualism in this time of crisis. Maybe sometimes we can look in Prague how beautiful it is if there's no people, but that's only temporary. But generally, there's a lot of even businesses. My girlfriend, for example, we were walking through Prague, and we were saying there's a lot of very tasteless businesses that maybe should not be here. Maybe they just respond to some demand of people who are rich and don't need these things.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of my friends who have these small businesses, they see the good point in cleaning. Maybe the society needs some cleaning, and some things which we don't need, should go away, you know. But I think there's more negative things than positive. But I think we're all looking. But I think it, you know, as a healthcare provider in the Czech Republic, we, for example, had a lot of problems in the healthcare system. You know, underpaid nurses and bad hospitals from 18th century that are very bad for infection control to isolation. So I always tell, well, this is the time to think that before we forget the epidemic, to build new hospitals that will deal better with epidemics in the future. You know, that we can have hospitals equipped with protective equipment like respirators every day. You know, it's not only coronavirus, it's tuberculosis, it's measles, you know, it's all these things that are around that we need the respirators for. How come we have shortage right now? You know, they should still be here. And lastly, but not least, I see a good point, but people look at scientists and physicians in a different way. You know, they suddenly start listening to us. We have a lot of people, I'm sure, same in Spain, in Germany, last year, the year before, the anti-vaccine people. You know, they always say we should live with the nature, and we stop vaccinating our child, and it's a new era, and they stopped the reason. They stopped believing reason. They started believing in, and how much price would they pay these days if they had a vaccine against coronavirus, right? I always tell them, like, maybe the stuff that the scientists and doctors are telling you, it's not such bullshit as you always thought. Maybe you should just listen, because this is serious. And there's many of us now on TV and in the radio, scientists, doctors, you know, and it's good, because people should realize that, you know, science is good, and science is, you know, and maybe they should, you know, listen less to these, you know, celebrities that were always on TV telling how they feel and what clothes they're gonna put on, and you know what I mean. I mean, it's hopefully people realize. But unfortunately, the scary part I have to mention is that a lot of people want to abuse the epidemic for their own sake. You know, either make money. We have people selling these masks for, you know, 20 euros and things like that. We have people in the government who like the power, who suddenly saying, you know, we should keep going like this for a year because we don't know what's going to come, and there's no medical reason for that. So, you know, there's good and bad things, but I hope I mentioned some good things.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Time. And good luck and good health. Keep healthy.
Thank you.